Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish Podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Len Testa, and this is our show for the week of Schmersday, August 5th, 2024. On the show today, new details on Epic Universe's Harry Potter Land, the Disney Destiny cruise ship, and is a Wilderness Lodge expansion in the works. In surveys, we finally have the Epic Universe Annual Pass Survey. Then in our main segment, Jim does a deep dive into the history and possibly the future of Disney's Frontierland concept. Let's get started by bringing in the man whose life is a fairy tale. Unfortunately, it's one of those German fairy tales that starts in a dark woods and ends with only the family of axe makers actually better off for the experience. It's Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
It's going reasonably well, but you're not wrong. If you, I mean, they're the two gentlemen who collected all of those Germanic stories, the Brothers Grimm. All right,
Brothers Grimm,
they could not have been more on brand. I mean, it's just sort of like if you think about like the real story behind Hansel and Gretel, which is actually the
Hansel?
But no, the Great Famine of 1315 through 1317, when parents actually thought it was a kindness. Well, we'll take the kids out in the woods and leave them there, and it'll sort itself out. It's just sort of
exactly
the only thing weirder and sadder. Have you ever seen the Tim Burton version of Hansel and Gretel from '83?
Oh, it's a fantastic movie. Very dark.
Very
but
dark.
Fantastic movie.
But again, this
very
was
entertaining.
Burton was still an employee of Disney in '83, but when he handed this thing in, Disney did not know what to make of it. In fact, for a time, they only aired it once on Halloween night in '83, and then put it so far back in the vault. It's like, yeah, no one's seeing that again.
It's in the bottom cabinet of a disused lavatory in the basement where the stairs have gone out. That sort of thing.
There we go. With the sign that says "Beware, Tiger." Yes,
exactly.
Okay, there we go. But oddly enough,
Fantastic.
available today on YouTube if you want to go eyeball it. But anyway,
it's lovely. It's a good movie. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Okay, cool. All
right, Jim, let's do a shout out to our Patreon subscribers. Thanks to everyone who subscribes to the show over at patreon.com/Jim Hill Media, including Alicia McLaughlin, Dave Krug, Brian Kowalenko, Bort, Jesse Peterson, and Carrie Hicken. Jim, these are the Blizzard Beach Imagineers working with the city of Orlando on a bid for the 2040 Olympic Games, including new swimming events. Carrie says that you can expect classics like using the 8-lane toboggan racers for speed competition, and God willing that Disney's lawyers go on vacation every August, the Summit Plummet ski jumping event. True story.
Oof, okay. I'm going to land somewhere in the parking lot. I know it. Okay, well, anyway.
All right, Jim, on to the news, and we've got a ton of it today. Folks, the news is sponsored by TouringPlans.com. Touring Plans helps you save time and money at theme parks like Walt Disney World. Check us out at TouringPlans.com. All right, Jim, Universal Orlando released a fly-through video and more details for its upcoming Harry Potter Ministry of Magic Land for Epic Universe, and I've put a video link in the show notes. But the concept of the land is that it starts off looking like a regular sort of human park, a Muggle park in Paris, but you end up in 1920s Place Cachet, a hidden shopping district in Wizarding Paris, and you use the Metro Flu system to travel between lands and times. Have you seen this?
Yeah, I was looking at the material yesterday, and I have to admit, they very much looking forward to Harry Potter and the Battle of the Ministry. Do you want to give the Reader's Digest?
Yeah, so the main ride is Harry Potter and the Battle at the Ministry. So the concept is that Dolores Umbridge is on trial, and then things happen, and you join Harry, Ron, Hermione, and an elf named Higgly to put things back to normal. And Jim, I think you had mentioned that was it the concept for this ride that was sort of a late addition to Epic Universe? Wasn't this supposed to be like Fantastic Beasts?
Well, that's where this gets interesting. I mean, the physical place that you just described, the 1920s version of Paris, that comes straight out of the second film for the Fantastic Beasts films. The Crimes of Grindelwald came out in theaters in 2018. It's then, again, you mentioned that you use the Flu Network to move from place and time. That when you step into the Flu Network, you suddenly move to the Harry Potter world of the 1990s, and you're actually experiencing events that happened just after Deathly Hallows Part 2 concluded.
Yeah,
my understanding, at least early on, is there were discussions about, well, we should do that. This is we're doing Fantastic Beasts as the land. We should have a ride that keys off of Fantastic Beasts.
Right.
But then that film series, which was supposed to be 5 installments, stalled out with the third film, which was released in 2022. And in fact, just last year, in October, the director of the series effectively said, it's parked. This franchise is not going.
Oh, really?
You're not going to see parts 4 and 5 anytime soon. So I've been trying with the folks, asking discreetly among friends at Universal Creative about when was the decision made to go with a Harry Potter-based ride set in 1990s in 1920s Paris.
Right.
That said, though, if you look at the flyover, you look at the artwork that they've done for this new land at Epic Universe, Len, I honestly kind of feel sorry for the folks who operate Epcot's France. Because
it looks beautiful, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just, it looks to be 2 and 3 times the size of what Disney's got, and that includes the expansion that was done for Ratatouille.
Yeah, I think the French Pavilion is like 2 acres tops.
Oh yeah. And this is huge. And also they were very proud about the fact that the tallest building that's in Diagon Alley is actually the shortest building in this section of Epic Universe. This is going to be on a size and scale that has never been done in a theme park before.
That was the thing that when I watched it, I was watching the flyover with Laurel, and I was like, if these buildings are anything close to the size that we're seeing here, proportionally to the people that are walking through it, I mean, it's going to be like a real city.
There we go.
It looks amazing. So, Chip, let me ask you this question. So, Dolores Umbridge is on trial in this, and we know that Imelda Staunton played Dolores Umbridge in the films, right? She's on Broadway right now, right?
Well, actually, the West End.
West End.
She's in London performing in a revival of Hello Dolly, which, by the way, very well received, very hot ticket. But she's locked up in that show till early to mid-September, so that's probably the earliest she's going to be available to shoot the film elements of this thing. So
right, that's my thing. If reshoots have, let's assume that she's already shot most of this stuff. But if there are reshoots that have to happen, we start to get into what day is this ride going to open type thing, right?
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing that's kind of bubbling up here. The notion of this looks spectacular, but when is this actually going to be ready? And I think you and I have both been hearing the same things about.
It'll open in 2025.
There we go. Let's not get specific about that right now. But we said 2025, right? Yeah.
What even is time, Jim? I don't know.
Go.
Exactly.
There we go.
All right. The other, speaking of Fantastic Beasts, the other interesting thing in here that I saw was a stage show called Le Cirque Arcanus. And this is what Universal says is a live stage show with puppeteers, performers, and acrobats. And the puppets, Jim, going back to the franchise, is Fantastic Beasts. So this is where we're weaving this in. Was this always supposed to be here?
Well, yes. In fact, if you actually got to see the Crimes of Grindelwald, Le Circus Arcanus was a big part of that film. In fact, this is where they revealed the origin of Lord Voldemort's snake familiar Nagini. So it's interesting they are circling back on this. That said, there's a wonderful fake out with this, Len, in that you see this teeny tiny circus tent that's sort of set up in a courtyard, and when you enter it,
right,
it's kind of classic Doctor Who. It's bigger on the inside, and you travel through the space, and they've hidden the stadium-sized building that this thing is going to be staged in, inside one of the buildings in this 1920s Paris. So again, some clever stuff.
That was one of the things that I really liked about the fly-through, is that it showed, the outside of the Le Cirque Arcanus. And it was maybe the size of like a large sort of like camping tent, slightly bigger than that, but small, right? Definitely not a theater. But to your point, it's going to be a little sleight of hand, right?
There we go.
Yeah. A little trick of the eye, as it were. All right. There's also a wand shop called Cosme Akajor's Baguettes Magiques. And Jim, why have we not been calling wands Baguettes Magiques all this time, I don't know.
Well, if it's any consolation, as part of the video, they did walk us through the French pronunciation of butterbeer, which I'm not going to do because I would dislocate my jaw. But I have to admit, I'm a little concerned about this wand shop idea because it sort of leans into the Art Nouveau, very 1920s. Right. I mean, this is an upscale wand shop. And look, I think one of the very best things that they do over at Hogsmeade, and they do replicate it to a lesser extent in Diagon Alley, is the Ollivanders wand experience, where the wand chooses you. And this is really going in a different direction. The notion of, oh, you want a fancy wand from France. And it's sort of like, I just wonder how much of an appetite there really is out there for, well, I guess I need to get my French wand now.
I'm guessing that whoever purveys the or Cosme Akajor, when he purveys these baguettes magiques, he'll be different. He'll be smoking a cigarette. He'll be consumed with ennui. He'll be like, you can take the wand or not. It makes no difference to me, monsieur.
Okay.
That's how I would play that. All right.
Don't know how that's going to work in August in Orlando.
Exactly. Also, Universal said that there'll be magic windows throughout the land where you'll be able to use those new wands, and they feature a couple of them in the fly-through. Also, plenty of walk-around characters, it looks like. Yeah. And I guess here the concept is exchange students from various schools of wizardry.
Yeah, this is a departure from Diagon Alley and Hogsmeade. What was interesting is you really didn't have all that many walk-around characters. In fact, one of the hard and fast rules of the Wizarding World is characters from the films you only saw in the attractions.
Right.
And they were the actors that you had seen from the film. So I'm kind of intrigued that this is now being walked forward as part of the Wizarding World.
In terms of dining, there are a bunch of options. One is Café La Air de la Sirène. So it looks like Fantastic Beasts themed thing as well. It's a charming cafe where guests can find French sandwiches, plats du jour. I don't know what that is, but I think they have them every day, and desserts. Okay. Thank you. And then Le Goblet Noir, which I think is the most fantastic name of anything that they've come up with so far.
Yes.
So international dark witches and wizards gather to escape the prying eyes of the Paris ministry and have hearty meals or hushed conversation. I love that they're leaning into this. Like every land has like two restaurants, one for good and one for sort of evil.
Yeah. But again, I think as we pointed out for the Dark Universe restaurant, where what is it? You're in there with Dracula's familiars.
Yeah, I love it.
I'm going to be fascinated to revisit both of those ideas a year in to see. Okay, still up and running. We're still gonna do this.
I'm really interested to see which one is more popular, and I would be remiss, Jim, if I did not say that Universal's taking the high concept here by offering two kinds of restaurants that represent the duality of man. But there's a master's thesis in there somewhere.
This is true.
Anyway, Bar Moonshine, which is where American witches and wizards can enjoy a taste of home. And also, I'm going to try and pronounce it. God help me here, and I apologize to every francophone in the world. So, Beer a Bear cart?
There we go.
The butterbeer cart?
You're a braver man than I, but you did great.
You knew it.
Yep.
Oh, God, love it. Love the whole idea. So, it looks fantastic. And we're going to have more to say about Universal here in a minute. All right, Jim, other news. Disney Cruise Line gave us more details about its upcoming ship, the Disney Destiny, setting sail next year, 2025. And this sounds like it's going to be a ship dedicated, or at least heavily themed, to Disney villains. Not for nothing, Jim, but you and I have been talking up the idea of a DCL cruise ship dedicated to villains for like 10 years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially with the fleet expanding the way it is, just the notion of a ship that would have this sort of identity would at least, here's something different to try. Why don't you give that a shot?
And there's nothing like that at sea. So really looking forward to this. Let's go over a couple of details that they've announced. So the Cruella de Vil Piano Lounge. Jim, I cannot think of a more appropriate thing there than that.
Yep.
Also, the Cask and Cannon, a Pirates of the Caribbean themed bar with various artifacts that pirates have acquired during their time at sea. Also, the Aqua Mouse water slide makes a comeback. This is, Jim, we first saw this on the Wish, I believe. Continues on the Destiny with a new theme around villains. And the interesting thing here is 4 different ride experiences, Disney says, which means you'll be able to repeat it, which I would guess would be longer lines, but also more things for families to do. But if you're on like a 4-night cruise, you could do a different ride every day. That would be fun.
This is true.
I can see that.
This is true. Okay.
So Disney said that one of them is sing a silly song where Mickey and Minnie travel to Villain Mountain and must escape through the power of music.
Wow. Villain Mountain back on the table after all this time. How cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, very good. The concept art looks great. Also, we've heard before about the Haunted Mansion Bar. This one's called the Haunted Mansion Parlor. And we've seen the concept. And Jim, this is, I think, where they're going to do the glow-in-the-dark drinks. So super interesting there.
Can't wait.
Yeah. Cruising is going to be the thing we do in 2025.
That it is. Okay, I'll get the water wings.
Also, 2 bits of construction news. Imagineering has filed a construction permit for what looks like to be a fairly large project on the DVC side of Wilderness Lodge. So this would be the area, and I put a picture in the show notes thanks to our friends over at WDWMagic.com. Jim, this is behind the eastern side of the Wilderness Lodge cabins, the Copper Creek cabins, and sort of like southeast of the existing DVC building. And there's a whole bunch of area back there. The interesting thing here is the permits list addresses, 19 of them, but none of those addresses seem to exist now. So this looks to be a fairly large project over there, we'll see.
Wow. Okay. I mean, face it, if we continue the image that the WDW Magic people are nice enough to share, were we to continue to the right, we would eventually be where Reflections was going to be built along.
I almost titled this section Reflections to Electric Boogaloo.
What?
Almost.
But the very notion of 19 separate addresses. I
don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be more cabins.
Yeah. I mean, I on the face of it, I would say that, but at the same time, the notion of where you look at the proximity of what they're doing here and how close it is to the existing DVC.
That's what I think. I think it could be bigger. It could be like the land size looks like it would fit a DVC building the size of the existing DVC building, which would be much larger and, more lucrative than 19 more cabins.
No, absolutely. And at the same time, it's kind of an interesting half step in the direction of Reflections. I mean, you could take a bunch of the ideas that were developed for Reflections.
Oh, yeah.
Which was a DVC, remember? Yeah, that's fascinating. All right, well, let's keep an eye on this one.
Yeah, and the thing I want to look for here is really the size. Because if it's going to be, again, the size of the existing DVC building, we need to start talking about more restaurants.
Oh, yeah. Especially over here.
19 more cabins, you can kind of sort of see your way to that, but I think if we're talking about many dozens or low hundreds of rooms, we need to start talking about more dining options too.
Absolutely.
Things like boats. Is boat service enough for that? I mean, there's just a lot of questions around logistics once this happens.
Okay. Well, again, this bears watching.
And then speaking of construction permits, Disney's also filed a construction permit for Test Track with a company that specializes in projection dome technology. And it's the same vendor that worked on the dome for Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind. Jim, we haven't heard anything about this Test Track redo, have we?
Not yet. And again, what's fascinating about this project is a kind of a Splash Mountain Tiana situation in that no actual change will be made to the ride system, the route, that sort of thing. They are looking to change show scenes and what you see as you zoom through this building. So the fact that they're projection dome technology, that gets interesting. You wonder where they would use that along the existing ride track today.
Yeah, where would you go with it? I mean, I expect we'll hear a little bit more about this at D23 because all we know right now is that it might include cars. Like literally, that's all we know. There's some sort of automotive element to this ride, and
there we go.
That's what
and
we
it would
got,
run
right?
on a track. Okay, there we go. All right, that's all we're sharing.
There might be an outside element. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
All right, Jim. It is Christmas in August here because we have finally got the survey that we've been looking for, and that is the Epic Universe Annual Pass Pricing and Options Survey. Thank you to our friends Patty and Carrie, who both sent in screen caps of this. I am super excited about this, Jim. Let's jump right in. All right, so I'm not going to go through every question because there's dozens of them. It starts with the usual demographic questions. Where do you live? What's your income? Stuff like that. What kind of AP do you have now? And then how interested are you in visiting Epic Universe? Including the question, Jim, of when do you plan on visiting Epic Universe? So immediately after opening, 1 to 2 months after opening, 3 to 6 months, 7 to 12, more than a year after opening, or I don't plan on visiting Epic Universe.
Okay, interesting.
And then I don't think I've ever seen this kind of question before. So hats off to the Universal survey team. The question is this: once ticket products for Epic Universe are available for purchase, when would you plan on purchasing? And it's a slider, Jim, that goes left to right, with the left option being as soon as they go on sale, and the right end being closer to my day of visit. So it's not a set of options. It's like an analog slider. Never seen that before. Really interesting. And I'd love to know how that's going to be interpreted on the back end.
Yeah. It's like, okay, we lay this down on a calendar. That looks like 9 months to me. So
yeah, exactly. Like so they have as soon as they go on sale, but we don't know what that date is.
Yep.
And then closer to my day of visit, which they could probably suss out from the previous question about when you plan to visit.
There we go.
So I kind of get that, but the use of an analog slider there is really interesting.
It is.
And I'd love to know how they came up with that. All right, Jim. And as we go through this survey, I was struck by the kinds of questions in here to the point where, Jim, I was joking with Laurel ahead of time. If we could somehow map the DoorDash requests for adult diapers in Burbank as we go through these questions, I think we would see a spike. Starting about now. All right. Here's the first question that was really interesting in the survey. Imagine that Universal offered annual passes where you could choose which parks are included for this build your own annual pass. Which parks would you be interested in having included? Please select all that apply. A build your own annual pass, Jim? What?
Okay. I would be a little concerned if I were Volcano Bay, but that's another issue. Okay.
But you know what? You know what? We can work around that. But here's what I love about this, Jim. To your point about Volcano Bay, it tells Universal which park is going to be least prioritized when Epic opens, and that is a huge piece of information to have.
This is true.
Okay, and then the main part of the survey is this. You'll be presented with possible concepts for a Universal Orlando Resort annual pass after the opening of Epic Universe. And then the idea is to, they present 9 screens of options. Each screen has 4 different ticket types. They include variations on things like pass length, the number, which parks are included, the Universal Express benefit or not, parking, early park admission, Halloween Horror Nights, blockout dates, and then prices, right? So we'll go through this. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but let me, as an example, right? One would be a 12-month pass with free valet parking, early park admission at Universal Studios Florida and IOA, free Halloween Horror Nights on a non-peak day, no blockout days for $777. And then there are other different price points that range from $572 up to that $777. But Jim, there are other options here. A 4-park 15-month pass with Universal Express after 4 o'clock, free self-parking, plus early park admission at Universal Studios Florida and IOA, but not at Epic, free Halloween Horror Night ticket, no blockout dates at Universal Studios or IOA, but spring break and winter holiday blockouts at Epic, and then summer at Volcano Bay, $1,293, which I would point out, Jim, is about $200 cheaper, $175 cheaper than Disney's most expensive annual pass right now.
There you go.
So the question would be, would you skip one Disney park and one Disney water park, not, assuming they're open at the same time, which they're generally not, for that amount of money? Would you take a brand new park over your least favorite Disney park and water park for $175 less? That is a really interesting question.
That is. Wow. I mean, I have to admit, I'm also intrigued by this notion of a 15-month pass versus a 9-month pass.
Right. So we this is where I have a little snarky note to Universal about redefining what the word annual means. It's okay to go to 15 months, but down to 9, I think we're kind of pushing it there. But whatever, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this: I think this is a really well designed survey, and here's why.
Mm-hmm.
So we get through 3 of the 8 screens of questions, and then we realize, Jim, this is an adaptive survey that takes the input that you've given so far and changes up the questions after that. And here's how we know this, right?
Oh, okay.
After 3 screens of questions,
Mm-hmm.
Universal goes out and says, okay, you've said that a couple of these things just are not going to work for you at all,
Mm-hmm.
right? Would any of these features be totally unacceptable to you? If so, mark the single one feature that is most unacceptable so that we can focus on annual passes that meet your needs. And it goes through like, block out dates, pass length, pass, but it adapts
Mm-hmm.
so that it knows how to ask you the rest of the questions. And I love this, right? So you go through all of these things. You pick the one thing that is, that you least like about the options you've seen so far.
Mm-hmm.
And then it continues, right? So, 12-month passes, 15-month passes, again, with things that are changes. So you go through one screen of that, and then it asks, are there any other totally unacceptable features? And this is where it gets super interesting, Jim.
Okay.
You'll note that the first option after it asks you the second question, screen 5 of 8, is a 15-month annual pass with all 4 parks, Jim,
Yep.
for $605.
Wow.
Yeah, this is where I came up with my adult diaper joke, because that's less than half the cost of a Disney annual pass.
Yeah. But again, how are you interpreting this? I mean, the notion of you use Epic Universe as a way to push people into islands and studio.
I mean, there are a couple of ways of looking at it, because as soon as I saw this, I started asking people who design surveys for a living. So one might be to figure out what is the lowest amount where you would actually agree to this, right?
Yep.
Like if it was free, would you take it, right? Okay. What if it was $1,000, you wouldn't. So, you're kind of doing like a binary search in between there, to figure out what the price point is where you would figure that out.
Yep.
And then you can key off of that, because again, I think this is an adaptive survey. They do ask after that one more question about, and it's much more targeted, about which other features are unacceptable. So at this point, you've gone through 4 or 5 screens. They've asked you for your top 3 most unacceptable features. And for this one, I guess based on whoever filled it out, it was block out dates. And then finally, something that we can compare to Disney. So 2 screens, 8 options for annual passes that include all 4 parks. But Jim, the interesting thing is none of those passes cost more than $1,008. Universal's most expensive annual pass right now is $1,095. And if you think about what you'd expect to pay for that in 2025, assuming 3% inflation, that's $1,128. So we're talking about $100 less for an additional park and 15 months. That's $450 less than Disney's. And so granted, Disney's comes with free parking. This one won't. But Disney's only got one annual pass option for people outside of Florida. And that's the Incredipass. Yeah.
Yeah, I what's intriguing about this, Len, is I remember the stories about Endless Summer,
Right.
The value that they built out on iDrive, and the notion of, in order to build repeat business for this hotel, Universal supposedly decided, okay, we can operate at a loss for 7 years.
And they actually told neighboring hotels, this is our strategy.
Yep. So I gotta look at this and the very thing you pointed out about the price point, and wonder, is this Universal's play to up its game in the annual pass market? And
Right.
I think the thing you just pointed out about when you consider the limited options that Disney has for annual passes for people who don't live in Florida versus
They've got one, right? And it's
Yeah.
$1,500 with tax.
Yeah.
Yeah, more than that.
you look at this and it's like, whoa, boy.
So this is the thing. I think, one way of looking at this is we're just testing out price points, right? And obviously a survey is not the final result.
Oh, certainly.
But they could be figuring out, right? If we charge $100 less for our brand new park with a, completely filled with brand new rides, how much market share could we take with this?
Oh, God.
Because if you're on an annual pass, you're staying at a Universal hotel. You're eating at Universal restaurants. You're buying Universal merch, right? It's not like you're just popping in, right?
No, absolutely. And more to the point also, because you have your merch discount with your annual pass, you're actually buying more. So, yeah, this is genius. Holy
The
cow.
other thing that I like about this is, if you think about what Bob Chapek said back when he was CEO of Disney about how annual pass holders are less valuable than day guests who are coming in, spending 4 or 5 days staying in the hotels, right? Universal is going to get that because it's building a brand new park. And Disney's not going to get that because Disney's not building new rides. It's like they're pointing out that Chapek's reasoning was sound under the assumptions he made, but the assumptions aren't written in stone. And if you change one of the assumptions, like we're building a new park, right, all of that stuff goes out the window.
It does.
It's really interesting. So I added about 8 more screens in there. We're not going to go through all of them, but different pricing options in there. I'm really, really interested in where we land on pricing for this. But I'm guessing right now, $1,100 would be the upper limit for an annual pass just based on this.
Yeah.
And again, hats off to Universal here. You guys are, whoever's doing these surveys, just doing a great job on this. Really, really well designed.
Just, I would love to see the data they're pulling in off of these things and how they're using this to finesse what they're going to do. So, no, killer.
Jim, quick idea here, because we need to make some money off of this too. What if we set up a vending machine at Disney headquarters that sold only Maylocks and Tums? Could we keep that restocked?
I don't know. I'm also thinking of how much to rent trampolines outside of the Team Disney Burbank.
Oh yeah, you don't actually. I actually said this. Someone was like, "You're not walking under the windows of any multi-story Disney building at this point, right?" No,
you're
not doing that. No.
Okay. So.
All right. On to listener emails. Here's one from Dimitri Ravenos, who's been a longtime listener. He says, and this is based on our story last week about the opening of Rock and Roller Coaster. He says, "I too have a Steven Tyler encounter to share that you might enjoy. In another life, I hosted a wacky morning zoo radio show in Raleigh, North Carolina. Now, I hate Aerosmith. They're literally my least favorite rock band. But we were the local rock station and they're legends. So when you're offered a chance to interview Steven Tyler and introduce the band at the concert, you take it. Fair enough.
Okay.
By the way, Jim, I don't know if I've ever said this, but I actually have dreams of being able to introduce Van Halen live. Like I practice the words sometimes. Anyway, whatever. That's fine. Everyone understands that, right? So, so Dimitri continues. Backstage before show, we were told we had 30 minutes with Steven. Now, we can only put like 8 minutes on the radio show. So we talked about all kinds of stuff that we knew probably wouldn't make it on the air. And my partner was fascinated by all the scarves in the room that Steven was choosing from for his mic stand that night. And Jim, you can actually see this in the post-show video.
Oh, wow.
We started talking about what makes a good scarf, and Steven told us that he sends an assistant to the local Ann Taylor loft at each tour stop to see what was there, and if there are unique patterns or colorways he didn't have, the assistant would buy multiples of that design. So the interview ends, everyone says goodbye, we don't see them again. Aerosmith came back the next year, and we were offered another interview. I thought it'd be funny to bring a gift basket with North Carolina food goodies and a $100 gift card to Ann Taylor Loft. So we put it all together. We head to the theater. At the last minute, we're thrown a curveball, and instead of Steven, we get another member of Aerosmith to do the interview. But I grabbed the assistant that brought us in, gave them the basket, and said, "This has to go to Steven." So we do the interview, Dimitri says, and whoever was with it. As it was ending, Steven pops his head in and says, "Hey, you guys remembered? Hell yeah." Then he remembered that I was a Disney fan and added, "Tell them I said you could skip to the front of the line next time you ride Rock on Roller Coaster. I'm a rock star. It's cool."
Oh. I just
What a great story. What a great story.
It is a great story, but at the same time, if you held a gun to my head, Steven Tyler and Ann Taylor, I would have never connected those two. But that's
great.
My
God.
That's great.
Oh, it's so funny. And I love the fact that not only did they remember, but Steven Tyler remembered.
Yeah, that's
the
cool.
story. That's awesome. All right. A quick email from Michael Lee of Dublin, Ohio, from our Patreon page. My family and I just returned from a 4-night stay at Universal Studios Florida. We splurged a bit on the Strip and stayed at one of the premier hotels, meaning we got unlimited express passes for the family along with our stay, and they were amazing. We walked onto almost everything. Wait times are hard for us with a child on the autism spectrum, and Disney's Disability Access Service has been great. But with express passes, we only had to use Universal's counterpart for one attraction, and you can probably guess which one. I'm guessing it's Hagrid's.
There we go.
So that is super interesting. I mean, part of this is scale, right, Jim? That fewer people visit or stay at Universal's hotels than Disney's hotels. So they can do things like that. Anyway, Michael continues, so I'm curious, why has Disney never embraced anything on the monetary scale of the Express Pass system? Is it as simple as Universal operating smaller theme parks with fewer people in attendance? Is it counter to Walt's ethos about family-oriented theme parks? I know that lightning lanes have caused a lot of uproar and that Express Passes are pricey when not accompanied by a premier hotel stay, but they were so valuable as time savers that I'm curious about Disney's thinking in rejecting that concept.
I think you mentioned it just earlier. I mean, the notion when you just the number of Disney premium hotels compared to Universal, let alone factoring in the moderates and the values. I mean, I don't think this is an option for Disney.
Yeah, there's just not enough capacity. And you'll notice too that Universal's talking about changing which parks get which benefits once Epic Universe opens in Helios. So they're starting to run into the capacity questions that we're seeing as well with Disney. So
I agree.
I think it's just a matter of scale, yeah. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Jim gives us the history of Disney theme parks Frontierlands. We'll be right back. And we're back. All right, Jim, set up the show premise for us here.
Well, a few episodes ago, you were talking about how if you look at Tiana's Bayou Adventure and how this Splash Mountain redo is now built around a Disney princess, and the Country Bear Musical Jamboree, which is now a celebration of the Disney song catalog rather than a country western celebration. It kind of feels like a better fit for Fantasyland. And you looked at these two recent additions to the Magic Kingdom and wondered if Disney was still in the Frontierland business. And it's understandable if Disney weren't, because the Western, a once hugely popular genre for film and television, is having a tough time right now.
Yes, because when we did this show, we heard from a number of highly placed executives in movie studios about their thoughts about Westerns.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, case in point, Kevin Costner's Horizon, an American Saga, which, by the way, you have seen Chapter 1 of. And
Yep.
You were telling me you really enjoyed that, 2 hour and 45 minute long film quite a bit, right?
Yeah, 3 hours with with trailers. It's kind of like if you're familiar with the Western Once Upon a Time in the West, where it's sort of like multiple stories that will eventually intertwine. This starts off as four separate stories, and two of them at least are very entertaining. Right, the one with Kevin Costner in it was like I would watch an entire movie on that. I thought it was. It wasn't Silverado. Certainly wasn't Tombstone, but it was it's a good Western, right? And I was concerned, if this thing stinks and it's 2 hours and 45 minutes long, I'm leaving, right? I'm not going to waste 3 hours of my life, in a movie that's not good. But I sat through the entire thing, did not get up once. It was good. Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing is that Costner, this is something Costner's been working on since 1988, before Dances with Wolves, which, by the way,
want
to remind folks, that's Dances with Wolves, released in 1990, is only one of 4 Westerns that actually took home the Best Picture Oscar. It was a great film and still is a great film. So,
okay, I got to ask, what are the other 3?
Okay, we
Unforgiven.
have Cimarron.
Did Unforgiven?
We
Cimarron,
have Unforgiven, the Clint Eastwood, and then a kind of an interesting interpretation of a Western, No Country for Old Men. But it's like, all right, I can see that's a Western. So
here's the thing. Well, so it won Unforgiven won the Best Picture in 1992. What else was up for Best Picture in 1992?
Oh, interesting question.
I'm looking this up right now. Hold on one second.
Okay, because at 92, in fact, that's interesting because I've been doing a lot of work on Aladdin, which came out in November of that year. And Aladdin did just giant business. What are you seeing for?
So here's what was up for that. Unforgiven, which one? The Crying Game, A Few Good Men.
Okay.
Howard's End and Scent of a Woman.
Oh, wow.
I would have to go with A Few Good Men.
Yeah.
I really didn't like Unforgiven. I did not think it met my preconceived notion of what a Western should be. I really disliked Unforgiven viscerally.
Not to belabor the obvious, but often Academy Awards are given, not necessarily, it's not the best picture, but it is like Clint Eastwood has, when you look at his body of work, and this man deserves recognition, and that's why that got that award that year.
I mean, I can see it given the other things that were nominated. I can get it, but in almost any other year, I don't think it would have. So like if it was a year later, right? It would have been up against Schindler's List, and it would have lost, right? Or Philadelphia, or The Piano, right? Okay, fair enough. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, well, but anyway, back to Kevin's been noodling on this since 1988, and his vision here is a 4-film saga, and in fact, to get it off the ground, he mortgaged his house to raise the $100 million. To make Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 of this series. Yep. And I wish the story had a happier ending, but Chapter 1 of Horizons came out in theaters June 28th of this year. Only sold 25 million worth of tickets in North America. And as a direct result, New Line, which had cut the deal with Costner, and in fact, the idea was this film would come out on, again, June 28th, and then on August 16th, you could go back to the theaters and see Chapter 2.
Right, we were going to get 2 this year.
And New Line, based on that box office, was like, nope, we're not releasing that. But again, happier ending to this story. We just yesterday, it was revealed that Chapter 2 would be screened at this year's Venice Film Festival, that it's going to be filmed or screened out of competition on September 7th, and hopefully this will lead to a new distribution deal for the film. Downside is looking increasingly less likely that we'll ever get Chapter 3 of Chapter 4 of Horizon American Saga, which kind of puts this film project in the same place as, well, we were just talking about parts 4 and 5 of the Fantastic Beasts film series.
Yeah. Jim, are you ready for the greatest crossover idea in the history of American cinema?
Wow. Okay.
I'm just saying synergy.
And ironically enough, both of these films were, I mean, New Line is a division of Warner Brothers. So somewhere there's an executive at Warner Brothers going, I'm listening, Mr. Testa. Please continue.
Exactly. I think now, Jim, if we were to walk into New Line and say, I've got a 4-part, we would not get the next word out.
There we go.
Before being thrown out of the office.
That's right. They'll heave you straight out to the lobby. Okay. So shared that story because, look, it offers up a little insight as to why Disney perhaps isn't in the Frontierland business the way it used to be. I mean, just the fact that the Frontierland shooting arcade closed on June 23rd of this year.
Yep.
The Magic Kingdom in Florida could then transform the space into a DVC lounge. I think that tells you all you need to know about the company's priorities at this point. But back in 56... very different attitude when it came to the Frontierland business. In fact, at that point, Disney couldn't move fast enough to expand that side of Disneyland Park.
Okay.
And let's be honest here. Part of that was on the heels of the enormous success of that initial trio of Davy Crockett episodes that aired on the Disneyland TV show from December of 54 through February 55. And Len and I on this podcast have talked about what a pop culture phenomenon Davy Crockett was back in the day. Yeah. And more to the point, how the Disney company was able to take the public's hunger for Davy Crockett related merch. And by the way, Len, we should take a moment to pour one out for all of those raccoons who lost their lives.
People running around national parks with traps.
That's exactly. My kid needs a hat.
Johnny, I'll get you a hat. I'll get you a hat.
So,
exactly.
But anyway, that money, this totally unexpected revenue stream, showed up just the right time. I mean, Walt had blown through so much of the money that initially had been budgeted for Disneyland that it was heartbroken because it was going into things the guests wouldn't see, plumbing, building foundations, all that sort of thing. So when first the merch money shows up, and then in May of 55, Walt literally takes those 3 episodes, stitches them together, makes the Davy Crockett theatrical film, puts it out into the theater, and Len, that chunk of money is actually what gets Disneyland over the finish line.
That's amazing. Jim, I got to say, I mean, Walt's timing for all of this is impeccable because you look at the end of World War II, right? So it ends in 1945.
Right.
Soldiers start coming back. They start, getting married, having kids and stuff like that. We're talking about a huge swath of baby boomers who are 9 and 10 around this time. And television's just invented. These kids sit down in front of the television. Walt shows Davy Crockett and everyone's like, I need one of those hats. I mean, it's just excellent timing. Excellent timing.
Well, it's interesting you bring up the hats because they also wanted the flintlock rifle, Len. In fact, what's kind of interesting is, all right, we're moving into the late spring, early summer of 55. And in fact, Walt's still looking to leverage Davy Crockett for additional publicity for Disneyland.
Sure.
In fact, there's this wonderful story about, it's literally a week out from Disneyland's opening. And Buddy Ebsen and Fess Parker are at Disneyland. They're there with the team from ABC that'll be filming this thing live, and they're there to rehearse the number that they're going to do during the Dateline Disneyland, the 90-minute live special. And it's a song called Bang Goes Old Betsy. And by the way, music written by, again, you've been in his archive, Len, George Bruns.
Right.
But he's the same guy who wrote The Ballad of Davy Crockett.
Which is a great tune, by the way.
It is. But also what people don't realize today, and it tells you a lot about entertainment in the mid-50s, that was number one on the charts in the United States from late March of 55 through mid-May of the same year.
2 months.
2 months.
If Casey Kasem was doing the American Top 40 back then, he would have been like, guess what it is?
There we go.
Guys?
I'm going to be drinking myself into a coma here because I can't stand this song. Exactly. But yeah, 10 million copies of that were sold. But again, yet another revenue stream to pour into the construction of Disneyland. And speaking of construction, okay, Walt and Fess and Buddy are all down at Anaheim at the same time, and Walt decides he wants to get his picture taken with the two stars of Davy Crockett. But Len, here's the problem. Okay. Fess Parker is 6'5". Buddy Ebsen is 6'4". Walt is 5'8". Oh. And Walt understands this height differential. It's going to make for a bad photo. Yeah. So they're standing outside of the Red Wagon Inn. And Walt goes, hang on. And he actually goes into the building and scrounges up a box. And he brings it outside and puts it on the ground between Buddy and Fess and stands on it. And now he's almost the same height. It's like, okay, take the picture.
All right, here we go. Walt knows visuals. Let's go with that.
No, that's it exactly. I mean, but what I love about this is Walt's a showman, so you're right. He understands this will be a good visual. And also just a touch vain, which makes him human. Anyway, to get back to Buddy and Fess and Buddy performing live at Dateline Disneyland. And by the way, it's worth looking at the kinescope of this because it's like, why are they wet?
They're wet?
They're wet, all right? And
like
the
with
reason
water.
they're wet, as in water. And it's like, well, what happened? And it's just, we have to understand they had planted the trees and shrubs in Frontierland so late. They had set up automatic sprinklers to water the plants. And so here these guys are standing off camera. In fact, they're supposed to, Davy Crockett and Georgie Russell are supposed to come out of the wilderness and then take part in this dance number. And nobody thought to turn off the sprinklers during the special. That's
beautiful. Oh my God.
And so they come on at the height of and so they're standing there getting soaked. And it's like, okay, it's time now to make our introduction. And they walk on screen, and it's okay, buddy. Well, maybe they were in the river.
Patient men. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's July 17th. By July 18th. Fess and Buddy are on a plane to Illinois, where they're now going to shoot the prequel to Davy Crockett.
Oh, okay.
And those two episodes would air on the Davy Crockett or the Disneyland TV show for the second season in November or December of that same year. But they actually flew out to Illinois. They're shooting along the Ohio River in a place also unknown today as Cave in Rock.
Okay.
All right, so they ram those through. And again, they air on the Disneyland TV show November, December of 55. But now back to Disneyland, specifically the weeks after the park opens. So July 55, August of 55. And the park is now dealing with something they hadn't expected. The kids are showing up in their authentic Davy Crockett coonskin caps, and they make a beeline for Frontierland and then ask the employees there, "Where's Davy?"
Oh, that's worse than the sprinklers. Okay, all right.
All right, but this is the thing, all right? And of course, there is no Davy because this is the dawn of Disneyland, and no one even thought about walk-around characters.
No, right. First time we've done this, yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, the characters that we saw as part of the TV special, Walt had borrowed those from the Ice Capades, and the day after the special aired, they sent them back. And so Disneyland management ad-libs. They walk up to Ron Dominguez and say, "You're what, 5, you got a 6'2", 6'3"? And the then 19-year-old Ron says, "Yeah, something like that." And these Disneyland managers then ask the future executive vice president of Walt Disney Attractions to put on this buckskin outfit.
First of all, Jim, let me say that between Ron and Fess and Buddy, you have the 3/5 of a starting lineup for an NBA team here.
There you go. Well, at least back in the 50s. But Ron personally told me this story at this one. So he says, "Look, we were having this ridiculous heat wave in Anaheim in July and August of 55. And they hand me the outfit that Fess Parker had worn during the live broadcast of Disneyland Grand Opening. And studio must have left it behind because it got wet." Ooh. And so I guess they were going to collect it later. And anyway, it's now, and it's authentic buckskin, Len. So it's now stiff. And it smells really bad.
Because, somebody wore it and they probably didn't clean it.
Well, and he tells his area manager, "There's no way I'm putting that thing on." And the managers are like, "Look, little kids are asking about Davy Crockett, and you're only one tall enough to fit this buckskin outfit, and you sort of look like Fess Parker. Now shut up and get dressed." And he said, and that's how he spent his first summer at Disneyland, sweating inside of this really smelly buckskin outfit, smiling and posing for photographs as Davy Crockett.
Oh, but you run into like an Elsa and Anna problem here. You got one guy who looks like Davy Crockett.
There we go. All right, so and that's it exactly. And Ron can only work 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. So as a make good, what they decide to do is they create an attraction in Frontierland. They create the Davy Crockett Frontier Museum, which is located, in fact, if you remember the Parkland, there's the store now that's known as the Pioneer Mercantile. Okay. This is where this was located. All right, so we talked about Old Betsy, Davy Crockett's flintlock rifle. And again, it's such a big part of the mythos that is sprung up around Disney's version of the American hero. So obviously guns need to be a part of whatever this Davy Crockett Frontier Museum is. So what does Disney do? It reaches out to the NRA, the National Rifle Association.
It was a different time, Jim. It was a different time.
It was a different time. Right. But now you walk in and it's floor-to-ceiling historic firearms, the gun that tamed the American West.
All right, fair.
But at the same time, people are going to want something Davy Crockett related to take home. So they set up this photo op, Len, and let me describe this to you. Okay, so they have wax figures of Davy Crockett and Georgie Russell created, and they pose them in the wreckage of this Spanish fort. And the idea, Len, is they are recreating, as the photo op inside of the Davy Crockett Frontier Museum, Davy Crockett's last stand at the Alamo. All right.
Oh,
all right. And
wow. Wow.
So you as the visitor to the park are handed a coonskin cap. You're handed a copy of the Old Betsy, and you now pose between Georgie Russell and Davy Crockett in the wreckage of the last stand of the Alamo. And
could you imagine that today?
Well, all I can think of, Len, is this is the equivalent of Disney staging a photo op in the scene from The Lion King right after Mufasa has been trampled to death by the wildebeest.
Right. Okay. The wildebeest are parting. Okay, exactly right. Okay.
Yeah, can you get closer to young Simba? I can't see the tears in his eyes. He's standing next to his father's corpse. It's like, that's the moment? That's the moment?
Smile, kids, smile.
There we go.
Jeez. Just the Instagram options that you could do with that today would be astounding. Oh, my God. Great.
Well, downside or upside, depending on your take on it, the Davy Crockett Frontier Museum only lasts for December of 55. So what, July to December. maybe a 6-month run. But what's interesting is what replaced it is Disney had the actual keelboats that they had built and floated in the Ohio River for the production of those 2 episodes. Davy Crockett, they had those shipped all the way out to Anaheim and put in the rivers of America. And in one of the...
Those are the real ones?
Those are the real ones from the film. In fact, that was what was so bizarre. The episode airs, Davy Crockett and the River Pirates, airs on December 14th. 11 days later, Len, you can go to Disneyland on Christmas Day, and there on the river are the actual boats from the TV show that, again, you can climb on and go around the rivers of America and look out at the still under construction Tom Sawyer's Island.
Wow.
Now, weird little bend on this story that I got this from veteran operators of the keelboats at the parks. And now, mind you, this only happened for the first year or 2 after those episodes aired. But the Gully Whumper was the keelboat that Mike Fink wrote on, whereas the Bertha May was the one that Davy Crockett operated on the TV show. And what they said would happen is they would be loading the boat and there'd be this kid in line who'd dig in his heels and it's like, no. I don't want to get on the Gully Whumper. I want to ride on Davy Crockett's keelboat. And it's like, kid, that's out on the water. It's just sort of like, it's a keelboat. Get on the boat. And it's like, no. And they would...
So the cast members didn't say nerd and just push him in the water?
You know, I don't think nerd was a concept in the mid-50s.
There you go. That explains it then. Fair.
But anyway, according to Ron Dominguez, who would be in the vicinity of this doing his photo ops and that sort of thing, that continued to about 57, and then after that, it's kind of faded from memory. And people were just happy to get on the keelboats, and eventually they actually replaced the keelboats with bigger keelboats and removed the ones that had been used in production of the film because they were just able to get so few guests on them at a time.
Right.
But anyway.
But the keelboats ran until like the 90s, right?
They did. But so many people were pouring into this side of the park that, again,
right, by then, yeah.
We saw an amazing expansion of Frontierland in 56, which we will detail on the next and final installment of this series.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love this story. This is a great job, Jim.
No. Again, I just to this day, I mean, Ron Dominguez, just his reaction when he described, oh my God, that buckskin suit and how it smelled. And
no, literally, my question my question to you was like, is he still alive? And if he is, can we call him and ask him if he still remembers the smell?
Sadly, we lost Ron in 2021, but he was a great guy and was at Disneyland from day one, and that was what made him a great president or executive vice president of Walt Disney Attractions, because if anybody knew about really front line what people have to deal with when you're operating an attraction at Disney Park, it was Ron, and he always had the cast members that their best interest to heart, because, well, again, you got to remember that Ron was at Disneyland before there was a Disneyland. I mean, the Dominguez Ranch was part of the what was purchased to build the park, and in fact, his family home was the administration building for Disney till the early 1960s.
Oh, that's the Dominguez family. Oh, great story.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just that's the thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
he
was people talk about the OG, and
Ron
was the pre-OG.
Wow. All right, Jim, I'm going to throw one idea at her before we close. You know how Disney's got Parades and Live Entertainment on the schedule for the next couple of years, right? Josh tomorrow walking around in a buckskin outfit. I'm just going to leave it there.
All right. Well, stand up to wind. I'm just saying. All right.
All right, folks. That's going to do it for the show today. You can help support our show by subscribing over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, where we're posting exclusive shows every week. Our most recent show with Imagineer Jim Schul tells the story of how we went from Disney's California Adventure Park initial concept of a state fair to Paradise Pier. Check it out at patreon.com/JimHillMedia. On next week's show, we finish the story of Frontierland, and the week after that, tie a napkin around your neck as we serve up scrumptious stories about Fantasyland's Be Our Guest restaurant. You can find more of Jim at JimHillMedia.com and more of me, Len, at TouringPlans.com. We're produced spectacularly by Eric Hersey. He'll be covering Southbound and other honky-tonk hits with musician Wesley Scott at the 2024 Mozark Fest, a salute to our Western heritage, starting Friday, September 20th, 24, at the Missouri State Fairgrounds in beautiful downtown Sedalia, Missouri. While Eric's doing that, please go into iTunes and rate our show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. For Jim, this is Len. We will see you on the next show.